Greetings, ASLers. We have returned for another excellent game of Across the Volkov. This is going to be a slightly different feel from the last encounter we had in the Bounding Fire replay. That was simply a game in the War 1942 tournament competition. This is simply an example and I don't know, dissection of a third-party product. This is obviously Critical Hit. Yes, I hear the boos already, and don't change the channel yet. You don't have to worry too much about that. They do produce some fun stuff, and we're going to look at this particular module. I'm going to call it a module. You call it whatever you want, but most of their stuff I consider to be, quote, modules. And we're going to take a look at it and how it stacks up or surpasses some of the other third-party products or even MMP standards. So obviously with a third party, they probably have a different source of producers. A lot of these people that generate the content for Critical Hit could be single individuals, and they submit their stuff for a variety of reasons. They submit to MMP, Critical Hit, other third parties, LFT, Bounding Fire, you name it. And for whatever reason, they get selected from, or yes, I hear you guys, stolen from Critical Hit, but I won't get into that. All I care about is the game and how it my dollar provides me with entertainment value. One, I do like the Critical Hit maps. Not all of them, of course. Not all of them are perfect. So again, they might fall short of some of the MMP standards, and although I haven't experienced that extensively, but I haven't played on a lot of their maps. So that's what kind of this is. It's a foray into third-party products. One is Critical Hit, which I happen to have picked up a number of items, and I'm going to be checking them out. I love their maps. This is one of them. Stone Heights is another one. And, say what you want about them. The listings in Roar, the listings on ASL Scenario Archive. For the few playings that people post there, if they're not embarrassed to, for whatever reason, because they've been shamed, seem to be pretty even. I got to be honest with you. They play 5 or 6 playings. Yes, it's not statistically even, but it's not 5-0 on one side. But again, this is going to be an example, not only of just checking out a new third party, not necessarily a new third party, but a product from a third party manufacturer. And I got to be honest with you, I'm going to exemplify this particular scenario as a learning scenario for new players. And you say, Stu, you're out of your mind. What the hell are you talking about? I just unsubscribed to your damn channel. What do we mean by learning scenario, people? Do we mean balanced? Do we mean fun? What do we mean by a learning scenario? And I'm going to submit to you that a learning scenario is a scenario such that it has a number of facets which allows you to expand your skill set in reading a scenario card, deciphering what this author might envision in that particular scenario card, as we've done with the other ones, mind you. But this one's a little different because pretty much I've only done it with MMP stuff. And most of their stuff is solid. Again, you can compare some of these scenarios that I'll be playing in the future and in the past that I've had, including other members like Neil Eulens. I've got Making Mayhem. That's not from MMP directly. That's from Neil and Scott. They play tested crap out of that, and they had some of their other entourage do the same. And they submitted it. They went through the workings of MMP, submitted their product. and got it published, through their hard work. And again, this scenario is not this pack rather. Surprisingly, let me find it here. Was developed. The original design is an ATS design, Advanced Tobruk System, I believe it's what it's called, by Devin Henley. He, from my latest acquisition of a lot of lock and load tactical online, I don't have the games itself. I got a couple, but lock and load tactical, he is involved heavily in lock and load publishing. So in the ASL comp, which is this product, conversion and development is by David Lamb. I don't know about David Lamb, but at least it's got the credits there. I just happen to recognize Devin as one of the developers. And, again, he may not be developing ASL content now, but he had his hand in this product here, and we're going to delve into it. They have a number of playtesters there, 8 or 9 playtesters. So be that as it may, I mean, the playtesters don't necessarily make or break a system, or find all the faults, as we may see here from my deciphering of it. But be that as it may, we're going to delve into it. Again, I'll touch on a little bit more of the identifying this scenario as a beginner scenario prior to actually playing the game. This video might just incorporate discussion of the scenario itself and setting it up. Hopefully it won't be more than a half hour. So if it is double speed, time and a half, you're good to go. You could watch it within a short period of time. So taken apart from some of the, again, special rules. Again, all these third-party products, M&P stuff, you've got the new one coming out. The new one came out is Twilight of the Reich. You've got Hat in Flames, Prokhorovka, right? Quadragare, Salt Mary Glee's Drop Zone. All these separate products that have come out have their own really specific rule set for them. The rule set may not be extensive. Some of it is. Some of it's just simply terrain features. I think Drop Zone, Salt Mary Glee's is pretty short, to be honest with you. And I think a lot of the other products have just a small information on terrain, maybe a couple historical notes. I know a lot of Bounding Fire has that, like we covered last time. They use the Japanese model of dropping in, and which reflected the German paratroopers. And following that was pretty simple. You didn't have to read all the Bounding Fire rules they have for all the scenario packs. You just need to check out that little section there. Again, as ASL players, if you're not reading some of the rules before practically each and every scenario, of course, depending on what you do, if all you do is read barricades, you've probably read those rules 20 years ago, and that's all you do, which is fine. You're just not engaging in other stuff. That's you. That is your theme. That is what floats your boat in ASL. Me, I like a lot of minor stuff. I like a lot of obscure shit. Spanish Blue Division, is it obscure? I don't know. Is it obscure to me? I don't know about it. This is old. I'm sorry, old. Old defined as in not 5 years from now. So, actually, my copy doesn't have this nice, beautiful, wonderful color. Mine's got the ugly gray. God, it's nasty. Actually, I might print this out and slip it in my own. But beware of some, if you're interested in critical hit stuff, I'm going to use this as a detriment to critical hit. Make sure you don't buy the same stuff over and over again. Go to Mark Pitkovich's Desperation Morale site. Read up on his material there. So if you're looking for something, again, if I pique your interest in something like that, make sure you got to do your homework. When you're buying Yanks from MMP, there's Yanks, right? You're buying Quadragare from MMP, there's the newer edition, which obviously is a lot fatter than the old one. It's a newer publication. it's kind of, to be honest with you, it's kind of a rehash of what critical hit does. Critical hit rehashes something. They might throw something in there, another 2 scenarios or whatever. Technically, MMP kind of does the same thing, but more effectively, to be honest with you. So Quad Guerre, the old one, 8 scenarios. New Quad Guerre, 55,000 scenarios in a campaign game. So it's the same Quad Guerre. They're regurgitating that plus some of the French scenarios they have from annuals, journals, wherever, and they've thrown those in there. Again, it's an excellent way of accumulating all the French information. So let's not travel too far off the beaten path. Going back to the rule sections. This Spanish Blue Division, again, Spanish Fury is the one that I bought. Hell on the Eastern Front, obviously. Spaniards fought for the Germans in World War II, as this module and some of the ASL scenarios portray. And so with that, I'll go over some of the rules and how the rules are set up here for the Spanish Blue Division. Again, this isn't going to be a replay on this particular scenario, but we're just going to go over how they structure their rule sets. So, matter of fact, let me pop that. I won't pop it up. I just wanted. So I'll just kind of summarize it real quickly. It has 2 map sets with it. Let me switch over to the other map to show you kind of what one of the maps looks like. Here's the Volkov River map. This is the smaller of the 2 maps. Again, I implore you to go to Board Game Geek, Mark's site, Desperation Morale. Look it up on, load the map in Vassal on Spanish Fury, and you'll see the 2 different maps that are associated with this particular module. One is the Volkov map sheet, and one is the Russia Sitno map sheet, which, the background, obviously you see Sitno right there. That's just the Google image that I just kind of themed-wise on portraying where the action is. It's in northern Russia, northern part of Russia, just south of Leningrad. Anyway, it's got those different map sheets. It has landforms, and it goes over what landforms you have in the different map sheets. In the Volkov one, it talks about this particular hill, Capitan Navarro, and that is historically the hill is named after one of the officers that was lost during the fighting here by one of his fellow officers. So it's just, and then you've got the Sitno map sheet. I won't bother going over that. It has the terrain forms. It has a description of the terrain forms that you find on here. Good, again, a good summary. For any ASL player, is there anything new on this map? N3 looks kind of wonky. You could probably guess what N3 is. No, it's not a pile of crap. It's crag. Could it look better than that? Yeah, probably. But again, it's something different. I don't have a problem with it. It's not extensive. It's not an eyesore. Kind of looks like a scab, actually. But the rest of the terrain, standard. Just standard terrain. And it has a section. There's a particular section on the other map. Not really going to go into it too much, but it has multiple sections on how to deal with that terrain feature. Essentially, it's a road through a building hex. This is probably before, hell, I don't know, before narrow roads or other such terrain that other third party had described, and maybe together they all kind of piggyback off of each other to form a consensus on how they're going to use that particular map form. So again, I can appreciate a manufacturer, producer, publisher of ASL material kind of going over the paperwork. Easy to read, not too confusing. We're going to go to a couple sections which deals with the scenario that we're going to deal with today or later on. And again, because it's not written by MMP and their think tank, some of the verbiage might be a little different in the way you have to interpret it. It might not be as dry and encyclopedic as the MMP ASL rulebook. But again, this is why I'm kind of classifying it as a learning scenario. Every time you check out a new scenario, what have you, you've got to have and learn new things for the scenario. Either how to approach it, or simply what units are in it, how do I define. And again, it's multiple facets, from learning new terrain, learning a new game set, right? So as a new player, oh, I'm not going to buy that because, it's got a river in it. It's got some amphibious invasions, you're scared that it might have caves. I don't really want to go in the Pacific because, I'm just not familiar with it. Everyone says it's harder than hell. So I'm just going to stay away from it. But again, I'm going to break down how this can be a learning scenario. And again, page 1, what in terms of what I'm looking at, I have to literally look at 3 small sections on 1 page. That's because I'm working on the Volkov map, not the other one. So I don't have to read the rest of that crap. That's what you do with just the ASL rulebook. If you've got a section of rules you're not going to use, you're just going to ignore and go on for it. Cavalry rules. Is there any cavalry in this game? No, not going to touch it. Don't have to read it. So same thing with here. It's got essentially 2 pages of rules. And from this particular set, literally there is probably, I'm going to say, maybe 2.5 paragraphs of rules that you have to learn for this particular map set. And they're kind of special. They're kind of like special rules. These are the dreaded all SFSR are in play, which is Spanish Fury special rules. So, I'm not, whatever. So in this particular one, you got to read up on, you read through here and you'll come across Volkov riverbanks. The Volkov River is a swift-moving, deep-water river that cuts through the west side of the map. So obviously north is then top, right? Where my giant north arrow is. And west is on the left-hand side. It has a heavy current that flows south. It actually has the rules section that's quoted to identify the heavy current. Mind you, it has the rules section, okay? This is going to be important and when we continue reading the specific rule. And then it flows west. So it goes down. If this is actually a map that's cut, we've got about 8 or 10 more hexes down below. This map only uses this portion, or this scenario only uses this portion of the map, and so I kind of sliced it off. But it goes down and banks, as you see the black arrow, at that point, it's considered flowing towards the opposite direction. So it's kind of got a nice idea there where the flow of the river changes. That doesn't happen in any ASL game that I know of. So right then and there, a little bit more realism is pushed into it. And with heavy current, you're drifting down the map from top to bottom 2 hexes per game turn. So if you're in D5, right, you're going to drift down to D6 in your turn, and then the enemy's player, the opponent's player's turn comes along, and then you're going to drift down again to D7. If you were in C6, you would drift down to C7, and then in his turn, you would drift from C7 to B7. So you're kind of going down and backwards. So again, kind of just a nice little feature to have, nice little difference in the rules, make it a change for the banks and the curvature of the river. So here's where we get into the learning as learning situation. And then it continues. The riverbank is steep and hard to climb. Okay, so being an ASL player, define steep. Define hard to climb, right? Both steep and climb are ASL terms, but yet in this rule section, it doesn't have those rule references. So I had to kind of dig through it. And again, we're going to take a look at it. Any unit that climbs the embankment from a boat is marked with a CX counter. And then in parentheses, using minimum move / advanced versus difficult terrain. All river hexes are leveled -1 on both map sheets. So the river's not at the same level as the ground level. It's down below, so you're going to have like that crest line effect. But let's take apart the riverbank as a steep and hard to climb. Any unit that climbs the embankment from a boat is marked with a CX counter using minimum move and advanced versus difficult terrain. So in that aspect, and I just kind of worked that up, pieced it here. Riverbanks that are steep require you to actually climb the riverbank, right? And this just says is steep and hard to climb. Okay, it's just actually using normal English, so conversational English, not rules English. Any unit that climbs the embankment from a boat, which is odd because you disembark, right? You dismount. What do I have it here? I have it over here somewhere. After the boat is beached, essentially you beached, and then in the act of beaching, you may essentially unload at that point, right? A passenger must beach a boat before it exits the boat. Personnel can load onto or unload from a boat only if it's beached, and can do so across the hex side, I'm reading it from the rulebook, on which it is beached during their movement phase, advance phase. Taking the beaching rules, E5.23, I'm reading that specific section on how you get the hell out of a boat. All right? A beach boat can be freely unbeached anytime during the movement phase, advance phase, at the option of the possessing infantry passenger unit by moving it from the straddling position onto the bank, etc., etc. Pretty simple to read. So when you beach, during their movement phase, you may exit the boat, or in the advance phase, you may exit the boat. So you can stay in the boat, wait. Again, why is that important? -1 terrain, you're probably not going to be seen. If you do that in the movement phase, they could probably shoot at you. If you do it in the advance phase, they won't be able to shoot at you. So let's take a look on how the other part of that rule in terms of specifying minimum move or advanced versus difficult terrain. So what I gather from that, and this is the way I'm going to play it because I analyzed it, and we'll take a look at it in just a bit. If you should happen to move your boat, and I'll show, these are just the piece that I'm going to use. If you're going to move your boat along, and then you're going to beach along this hex side, and then you're going to unload the movement phase because you're going to move 4, and then you're going to drift, and then you're going to move 2. When you beach, it's going to consider that act of moving. You're not going to be doing the move, but it's going to consider that act of moving by putting a CX marker on it using minimum move. So your unit will then be placed here and then have a CX marker put on him. And it should have a pin as well, because it says you're going to gain the CX. It doesn't say pin, but again, to make this an actual playable game, you have to take this into consideration because you're going to do it in the advanced phase. So I'm going to consider that you can unload from the vehicle because he's going to move 4. He's going to disembark. So he's going to go 1, or disembark here, then 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And he's going to drift, and then he's going to go 1, and then he's going to beach it. And then he can move off because he has movement factors remaining. And I'm going to assume that you could do that in the same movement phase, because a minimum move pretty much means you can only move 1 hex. Obviously, he's moved more than 1. But the penalty for being a steep bank here and difficult to climb, which is not a rules reference, as has been done before in terms of heavy current actual rules references, it's going to just apply those similar penalties. So the penalty is, I'm going to say, it doesn't say you're pinned, but I'm going to say you're pinned to the movement phase and you're CX'd. Otherwise, you just keep moving, which seems kind of silly. But I'm going to assume that that's the case. In the advance phase, if you stay on it, you're simply going to advance into that location, into the beach. You're going to unbeach, and then you're just going to be CX. Because the pin, doesn't matter, is going to be gone in one phase. If you put the pin on the advance phase, guess what? Close combat phase, it's gone. So it's pointless putting the pin on. unless there's like an enemy unit there, which is, I guess it could be possible, but you're probably not going to do that. Anyway, I'm going to take that and how to interpret this particular rule. So again, not that difficult. And as you'll see, let's take a reason why. Why the hell are you doing it that way, Stu? Well, think of it this way: the Germans, or in this case, the Germans / Spanish, can start the game, and they should, because otherwise it'll just take more movement factors in the boats. So we'll describe that later, but you will then move 1, 2, 3, 4, drift, drift, and then German turn again. 1, 2, disembark, and then you'll be CX'd and pinned. I'm going to assume you're going to be pinned. It doesn't say you're going to be pinned, but that's how I'm going to play it. If this weren't the case, again, this is turn 2. This scenario is 6 turns long. However, I did see a different version, version 2, of which the module face has a version 2. It gives the Germans another turn, which is turn 7, which makes sense, to be honest with you, because it doesn't allow the Russians to counterattack and regain level 2 hexes. The victory conditions in this scenario is occupation. Whoever's the most level 2 hexes wins. So if the Russians move last, then all they do is they move away from you, and then they just advance on whatever. So this gives the Germans a last turn. So this would be turn 2, and if it took minimum move to get to here, it would have to be on turn 3, because then the unit would have to expend all of its movement factors in a 1 hex move to move to that location. So this would be turn 3 for all units possible in the game. And then we got turn 4. Let's see, he goes up here with an advance. Turn 5, he might go here. Turn 6, he goes up here. You're really not going to gain anything. So for all intents and purposes, interpreting it that way gets the unit here on turn 2. Turn 3, he could be here. Turn 4, and then he's got 1 to 2 turns. Turn 5, turn 6, blast some guys, do another hex, whatever. It makes it a little bit more playable. So just in terms of timing, again, learning what some of the scenario special rules might be. I mean, 6 turns, can you do that? That's the first thing I look at in the scenario. Can you even get there in 6 turns? And you have to say, again, move 4, move again, move again, move again. That's 4, and then 5, 6, 2 at the base. Most games have 2 turns, 3 turns of fighting at the end point of their travels. So if you, again, were to interpret it that you'd have to spend a full turn here, this is turn 3. And then turn 4 is up to here. Turn 5 is up to here. You've got 1 turn on the top. When you're gaming a system, when you're trying to break a system, you should know exactly how long it takes the enemy to get there. A Russian player who does exactly what I'm doing says, oh, the Germans aren't even going to get up there until turn 5. You essentially, you could just body block by putting all your units here. Because they're not going to get up there until turn 4 or 5. This is turn 5 right here. And then turn 6, they can't, even if they break, we're going to have some entrenchments. Or foxholes, rather, versus entrenchments. Right? So you have foxholes here. Let's say these guys break. They can just retreat up into the foxholes by low crawl. I said, yeah. I think they could do that, depending on how things go. And where the Germans are, of course. And then the Germans can't really get up on the board, even if all these guys are broken. Because they're just going to be body blocking at that point. So, again, you just take some common sense and see how it goes. Other special rules, they describe certain abilities one side has. In this game here, hand-to-hand can be employed by both sides. Again, that's why we have the big hand-to-hand marker up here. And then one thing I like, it has LOS and movement examples on the Volkov and the Russo Sitno map sheets. So if you're kind of iffy on your lines of sight, and movement examples, this particular, let's say, module has some examples, extensive examples like A through H, and attacks, and attack from here through there. They're all basic squad leader stuff. Again, there's nothing special on this map here that you need to concern yourself with. But if you're a newer player, it does give you a couple examples of, oh, there's no LOS to here. This is a hindered LOS. This costs 4 MF to go up. It has a couple of examples of, essentially, quote, examples of play. And that way it can reinforce what you think might be the problems that you might have to face in this scenario. And again, it does the same with the other map board. Not as extensive scenario examples, but it does have a few. So again, very short, simple, in my opinion, other than the riverbanks. That has to be sort of like an explanation. And again, wouldn't newer players pick up on that? Maybe not. But if the newer players obviously have read, you go through the rule section on boats, which is like 2 pages. And to be honest with you, again, that's why I enjoy this to be a learning scenario, because how often do you see boats in a scenario? I think there's like 10. There might be 10 scenarios out of the 1.6 million scenarios that we have that have boats in them, So you're just going to have to read through them. And to be honest with you, in many scenarios where I started playing, we read them on the table, just like we did with the parachutes last game. You read them as you're playing. I mean, you read them before the game, right? Before I go over to Jack's house, I read the parachute scenarios like, shit, I don't know, wing, whatever, drift, whatever. But as long as you're kind of familiar with it, when you're reading it with your opponent across the table from you, hopefully you both read it, and you both have done your homework on it. Then you push through the rules, and you'll find that, guess what? 80% of the rule section in the boats doesn't really apply, right? Doesn't really apply. It's 2 pages of rules, and it doesn't really apply. You've got the assault boats, small raft, big raft, doesn't matter. Put an X through those. Mark them off. Beaching, got to know how to do that. Got to know how to move. Got to know what the advanced phase is about. Water movement, got to know that. Stacking, unloading, piece of cake. Towing, pushing, probably don't need to worry about that. Untrained, if SSR says you're untrained, guess what? Doesn't, don't need to worry about it. Fire from the boat, simple. Non-ordnance and area target types versus boats, simple. Non-ordnance attacks versus beach or landed boats, simple. Ordnance fire, don't have any. Gone. Sinking, check that out. It's 1 drag on sentence. 1 run on sentence is that rule. Water line, again, that's what we're talking about here. Shallow water, doesn't apply. Broken berserk units might apply. Close combat, probably want to. You actually have close combat in the boat. I never actually knew that. Like if you're flying a pontoon, you come in a pontoon, you could have close combat. That's pretty wicked. You really don't want to do that if you're on a boat. You'd consider a passenger sort of like a truck passenger, and for all intents and purposes, you're screwed. You're just going to be in bad trouble, and that's it. That's all the boats. So you honestly only read about a page of rules on the boats, and you're going to trudge your way through them. Pretty simple, pretty intuitive. They can't be too difficult. Otherwise, it's just, it doesn't warrant the difficulty for what you're doing. You're just moving across the water. You're paddling as fast as possible. You got to know how to unload. You got to know how to load. You got to know how to get shot. That's about it. But it has some nice little special rules. Again, when I was reading this, oops, sorry about that. When I was reading this again for the umpteenth time, in terms of fire attacks and things like that, it's actually pretty interesting. You're kind of safe in a boat, to be honest with you. It's kind of weird. there is one major flaw in the ASL rules with regards to damage of boats. It's a gigantic flaw, and it's almost embarrassing. But we'll go over that later. It's just ridiculous how stupid that rule is. But chapter 8, so it's just simply amazing. But again, we'll go over it later. So as a learning scenario, you go through here. So let's go over the scenario card. Let's jump back to the card and reflect on why this is another learning scenario. Again, cover the boats and interpreting the scenario special rules in terms of the game set special rules and how that particular river is treated and how to unload onto the banks of the Volkhov River. Okay, so let's go back to the scenario. So here we are with the scenario. I love this cover. This cover is much clean. And I gotta be honest with you, kind of piggybacking on Neil's counter comparison. My counters are already pre-punched. You come with Spanish counters in this one, and only the personnel. And this is actually one of them, Sergeant Bizo. It has their little España symbol on it, and all the counters. I gotta be honest with you, it's pretty cool. The counters are pretty durable. They all clipped very easily, and they all had nubs on them, but you have to clip them. I clipped them with a 2mm, just as an aside, and they all clipped just fine, to be honest with you. Probably easier than the other ones. Maybe they're like a harder, glued together with more stout glue. I don't know, but I didn't get any really flanges coming off the edge. Maybe that's the 2mm versus the 2.5. I don't know, but the 2mm works really well with these counters. If you have difficulty with your 2.5mm, you might want to swap it with a 2.0. I've had some clippings with a 2.5 where I'm shaving a little bit more off the side because you have to press down hard. If you have to press down hard, draw back, don't clip it, readjust your counter. It should be effortless. Pop, 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 pop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's simple. That's the speed you should be clipping your counters at. If you have any resistance in the counter, stop and readjust. That might be restricted to the 2.5. The 3.0 is just a monster. It will eat half your counter. Anyway, just an aside. Let me see if I can zoom in here. Hey, there we go. So this is out from my scan of my game. It's got some history here. I'm going to do the history later. Again, we're going to look at the units. Again, perfect. Look at the OB. Infantry, very small scenario. Some of you might say, oh my God, Stu, this is a bunch of bullshit dice fest. Yeah, I think, again, I've got an idea of the dice fest. If you have 20 squads on each side, and if your scenario comes down to one close combat at the last turn of the game on the last test of the board that you have to get off, and you botch that one roll, is it dicey? You lost due to one roll. So if one roll can kill the 10-2 here, if one roll can zap your LMG stack, if you have a kill stack, then what's the difference between one roll in a 45 to 45 squad slugfest over 6 months of time, 10 hours a weekend, and it comes down to one roll in the close combat phase? I think those games, the large games, should be over before the end of the game. You either need to be dominating your opponent, or again, it's just rolling 1,000 dice, see who fails the most morale checks, and be done with it. And again, that's why I like the smaller ones. I could just roll some fewer dice and play more. If I roll 1,000 dice, I could play 20 scenarios versus one scenario. That's just me. Again, sometimes some people don't have a lot of time. If you got a ton of time, play whatever you want. But dicey, it could, if there's one boat and, this guy's got like 2 HMGs, then it's a stupid ass scenario. It's not a dicey scenario. It's a stupid ass scenario. So it's just poorly designed. And again, we're going to go into how these things are set up. Mind you, again, the Germans set up on that left side of the river as you were shown. There is an issue here, which I'm not sure if it's by design, and I'm going to play it as written. I will not make adjustments to the OB. Take a note. If you guys can see it, it might be a little fuzzy because it's a PDF printout. I'm not sure. It's nice and clear on my other end, but this here's just fuzzy as hell. Anyway, what do you see here? You've got 6 boats. This is 10 movement, which is the 10 movement. If you're pushing it over land, you're not going to do that ever with a boat practically, unless you're playing one of those 20-turn scenarios and you need your boats up front. You're going to drop them off like an ugly girlfriend. 14 portage points. That's the capacity of the boat. Well, how many portage points is a full squad? If you don't know, go check that out. Pause the video, come back. How many portage points is a half squad? How many squads do we have? How many boats do we have? Okay, you will find that you are exceeding capacity with that extra half squad. So you ask yourself as a new player, why the hell is there half squad here? Why not just give me another 468 and another boat? Right? No, why not give me a 468 and another boat? Again, as I was reading the boat rules, if your stuff is loaded onto a boat, it must be dismantled. It doesn't say that in the rule book. It doesn't say that in the scenario here. That's just a rule in the boats. It's got to be dismantled. You're not going to be going on there with your 82 millimeter mortar and from the boat. Dismantled. So when you get back on land, it's going to cost you a fire phase to remantle that weapon. This has a 12 hex range. Okay? If you can't see that, know that it's a German medium machine gun and has a 12 hex range. If you've been coming through a starter kit, you should know the German machine gun minimum range. LMG range for the Germans is what? You can't see it here. I'm going to cover it. What's the minimum range of a German LMG? LMG for the Germans. 8. What's the minimum range for LMG for the Americans? In starter. That's right. They don't have any, right? Russians. LMG range for the Russians. They're crappy. Do they have any in starter? Yeah, they got to have in starter kit. 6. Crappy. What's the range of this guy? 2. 4.26. These are garbage. These are conscripts units. Conscripts, garbage. So let's go back to the map, and we're going to decipher why this OB looks, quote, incorrect. You know, is it supposed to jam all the guys on the boats? Is it a screw up? Could be. Because you're not taking the boat back to go pick this guy up, because it's going to take 2 turns to get there, 2 turns to get back, 2 turns to get across the river. That's the extent of the scenario. So that's not going to happen. So let's see what this 248 might be used for. Again, as a new player, don't just put your counters on the board and push them around. All right? We need to figure out why certain things are. And we haven't even gotten to the Russians yet. So we'll get to the Russians in a second. So here we are with the map. I'll curve it down a little bit just to act like you're there. So all of our guys on the boats, when your guys load on the boats, the Germans can either set up on A through 6 or they can load in their boats. When they load in their boats, they are not on the board. You don't put your guys on the boats. This does not occur. These guys are in cloaking, so they come off the map and it's in like in board whatever. And all these guys, this is what the Russians are going to see initially before we get into talking about the 248. That's all. Well, you could put these right here. You know, you could put them like that. Well, it's two per hex, I think. So you could do something like this. You could stack them like that. You could stack them independently. I just threw them up here for the hell of it. And again, the boats, when they are beached, are stuck on the hex sides. So if these are on the hex sides, both of these boats are in A5. Or actually, technically, they are B4, B5, and beached on the A5. So when these individual units disembark or unload or whatever you want to call it, they're going to A5 and nowhere else. All right? If this boat gets destroyed, those units get placed in B4 with special rules associated with that, as you've read in Chapter E, right? So technically, these boats would be eliminated, removed from the map. Your units will then be put in this water obstacle and will be identified as such in terms of weighting infantry or whatever you want to go. You could probably crank his hex side like that just to differentiate him from the other guys. Because otherwise he'll just drown, right? So anyway, all these guys are in the boats, and this is what let's just say, for whatever reason, this is what the Russians can set up on K back through Q, right? Let's just say the Russians set up like this. And we got some mines for the Russians. We're not going to worry about that right now. So all the Germans on the boat, but let's say this little lonely 248 can't fit in a boat. You know, nobody likes him. You know, he's the last guy picked. He's got to stay here. He's got to feed the horses. He's got to clean up camp. He's got to shine all the nice, you know, parade boots by the time these guys get back, because they're going to come back victorious. They're going to have a grand parade. So these little bastards have to sit back there and do all the little grunge work. But let's say we give them an MMG. Say, Stu, why are you giving an MMG? Take that shit to the front, blast some Russians, cause them to die, and be done with it. Right? Well, yeah, we could do that. But why? When the MMG is back here, remember, we're going to be moving 1 turn, 2 turns. And we can't advance fire, because if we advance or move those units, which become CX and pinned, as we just described previously, there's no MMG fire coming from these guys. Yes, that will be dismantled, so that would be an LMG. And an LMG that is pinned and CX'd, yeah, 0 firepower. So essentially, your firepower is not going to come on until turn 3. And look, now we can fire on these guys on turn 3 if we want. Let's go back into the realism thing. MMG turn 1. Before our boats even disembark, we fire 4 firepower on these guys up here. 4 plus 1. Hell, you can even leave an 8-1 leader based upon the scenario special rules, and we'll get to those soon. And again, this is why I consider this a nice learning scenario. It has a number of facets that you need to take into account, and that I didn't even think about until actually I was creating this particular scenario. Leave the 8-1 here with the medium machine gun. Say, Steel, what the hell are you doing that for? We need him on the front, rallying units, crap like that. Yeah, that's all fine and dandy. And again, we haven't gotten to the scenario special rules yet. But let's just jump over to one of the scenario special rules, and we're going to just tell you why, as you're learning how to play this scenario, and every single scenario that you get into, it might behoove you to leave this 8-1 over here with this medium machine gun. And there's multiple facets of why you'd want to do that. So let's jump back to our scenario card. Let's take a look at some of the scenario special rules, particularly only one of them. Okay? So that's our OB. Got 10 minus 2, Mr. Badass himself, right? He's got the cool Spanish symbol. Again, the counters are really cool. I think they're high quality. They do have like the little flanges, so when you prop them from the sprues, they will be old school 1985 Avalon Hill style in terms of you got to pry them from it. They all seem to be about the same size. I really didn't find any distinguishing size differences between them, but your mileage may vary. Forget about that crap. Why, Stu, do you want to put your medium machine gun, your crew, and your 8-1 on the other side of the river? Scenario Special Rule 2. The Spanish 10-2 leader represents Lieutenant Escobedo, Mr. Badass himself. He starts play marked with a heroic counter. Okay? Which means he's a hero, which means he dies fast. In all intents and purposes, he dies faster. Any Spanish unit, as long as it is stacked with him and or in adjacent hexes, is adjacent capitalized? No. And we're going to tell you how that applies as well. To this good order leader is considered fanatic. So what happens when you're fanatic? Well, If you have no clue, go to A10.8, read up on it. It's not that big a deal in terms of what we're doing here, but during the scenario, that's very important. And we're going to point out only one thing when we get to there. So if Escobedo is good order, he is going in and adjacent to his location, hex rather, doesn't say his location, just his hex. You are going to be considered fanatic. So with that, let's go back to the map. Remember, how many squads do we have? We have 6 squads. Okay, 6 squads. All right. Our troop makes it over to the ridge over here. Actually, our troop's in the middle of the water. We've got, let's get rid of this crap. This is some of the Russian OB setup. I'm just going to move this out of the way. These guys set up on the board. We'll get to that in a minute. I just need some space here. So we got boat here, a boat here. And again, this might determine how you float your boat. Maybe spread them out. Do you really need to spread them out? The Russians have LMGs. Let's see, he's got an LMG here and an LMG here. Range of 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Again, when you're reading your boat rules, if you're just pushing counters around and not reading your boat rules, from what I interpret from the boat rules, infantry fire, non-ordnance fire, is halved versus boats. They're considered, quote, hull down as well, but we don't have any ordnance weapons to fire upon the boats. So it's pretty easy to move across. So these LMGs will have a 1 firepower on these boats. Okay? You look at your 1 firepower chart. What is the star value on the 1 firepower chart? Go look it up just as a caveat, and you figure out what the effectiveness of these LMGs are versus the boats, because these guys are hidden in the boats. They're not, there's nobody stacked with them. They're hidden in the boats. But we know where the 10-2 leader is. You tell me where the 10-2 leader is. You're damn right. He's right there. And you've got squads, and you just got squads in all of them, right? There's just 1 squad in each of them because that's the capacity. I'm not going to put them on there. So all of them are going to be fanatic because they're all adjacent, because it wasn't capital adjacent. It was lowercase adjacent. And again, as a learning scenario, you have to understand the differences between adjacent and capital adjacent. And that makes a distinction in this particular application of his abilities. Let's say the Russians had more firepower, that would come into play. I honestly don't think it's really going to come into play here. I could be wrong. But that's what's going to happen. Then these guys land, right? Let's say we double up. We're just going to double up the hexes here. You could stack them on the same hex, not a big deal. He's going to be on one of these locations. He's going to come into here. And you're going to have 2 squads up there. He's going to have 2 squads here. And he's going to have 2 squads here. I don't care about the LMGs or the other leader. Actually, the other leader just stays up here. So now 10-2. In or adjacent to the 10-2's hex, they're all fanatic. Okay, what's our morale? All right. This guy, 468 up there, 9 morale. Zoom in. Zoom in, Stu. I can't see a damn thing. 7-0, 8 morale. 467, 8 morale. 469, 468, 468, 468, 469, 468. Again, scenario design, people. That's the bling that I love to see. Is you have a particular leader, and these guys, there's 7 morale units. Even these guys at long range, 2 even, 2-2. These guys are going to break all day, but for all intents and purposes, making them fanatic. They're immune to pin, right? They won't cower, and other things, as you've read when you look up the fanatic reference, right? So what that essentially does, for all intents and purposes, is giving them, quote, a +1 terrain as they're moving, because if there's 7 morale and you add 1 because of the fire effect, you essentially kind of give them cover. So they're going to be moving up within 2 hexes of 10 minus 2. If you're not within 2 hexes of the 10 minus 2, you might not be playing it most efficiently, but you want to concentrate your firepower, so you want to blast everybody. And the other thing is no cowering. These guys aren't going to cower. Okay? So, given that to be the case, that these guys would be moving up like that, we have the 8 minus 1. Does he DB up there? Not really. Not really, because they're not going to cower. He's not going to stop anybody from cowering, right? He might reduce their cover for height advantage by 1, make it even. But so what's his shot going to be? Be 4 even? Again, this is turn 3. It might be 8 even. Let's say it's 8 even. Okay. Guess what? Back here, if they start lining up here initially to take the onslaught, right? He's going to fire 4 firepower with rate of fire as often as he can. Prep fire phase number 1, defensive fire phase number 1, prep fire number 2 as his troops land, defensive fire phase number 2, prep fire phase number 3 as his units start moving forward. That's 5 shots with the MMG. One of those will likely be a rate of fire. So you're looking at 4 even shots. Get your charts out. What does a 4 even shot do? If you roll a 6 or less, you will generate a morale check on these units. A 6 or less. And again, let's check the range. Say, Stu, is he in range? B4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Oh, looky there. 12 hexes. 12 hexes, 12 hexes, 12 hexes, 12 hexes, 12 hexes. Is that a coincidence? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe. But this unit can help suppress or destroy. Remember, these are all 4 even shots. 4 plus 1 on foxholes. Defeat the guys up front. If these guys, remember, they're conscripts. This guy's a conscript, 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 crap script, crap script, crap script. Oh, that's a foxhole. So, conscript, guess what the ELR is? If you've played more than 4 scenarios with conscripts, you probably know what the ELR is. It's probably not a 1. 1's kind of unbalanced. Nobody has a 1 ELR unless it's like a very special situation. 2. The ELR is 2. So if you get a morale check on these dudes, just a normal morale check. If you roll 6, a normal morale check, they pop an 8, right? That's 2. If they pop a 9, 10, 11, or 12, which is like 25% of the time, 1/4 of the time that you get a result on these guys, which is about 45% to roll a 6 or less, they're rolling a normal morale check 25% of the time. They're going to be disrupted, and that is bad news for the Russians. Disruption means you can move through them. You don't have to worry about them. You could bitch slap them from here to next week, and they're not a problem. So it's really easy to disrupt conscript units with an ELR of 2. Okay? It's very short range, very low morale, very vulnerable, let's say. And with that medium machine gun, you're going to get 5 to 6 shots before your units engage them. Now, if you were to take that medium across the bridge or across the road, let me switch over. If you were to take this bad boy over here, and let's say he's up with here, you got to mantle it on turn 3 defensive fire phase, and then turn 4 you can use it. 4, 5, 6, and you're going to be moving most of the time. If you're moving, you can't use it. Worthless. Worthless. Use it to cover your units up the top. Now, Stu, why do you have 8 and 1 to it? We could use that guy up front. Yeah, you can. You absolutely can. If this unit breaks, if these guys break up here, you might need an 8 minus 1. But, again, as a learning scenario, knowing that you have one of your leaders back here, your 7-0 is either going to be doing the heavy lifting. Remember, When these guys break, what's their morale? They're still considered fanatics. As long as this guy's good order, they're still considered fanatics. So without a DM, even with the DM, this guy will need 5. This guy will need a 4. It's not bad. If this 10 minus 2 could wing it over there, they need a 7 and a 6. Not bad. Now, that decision is up to you as a player if you're going to do that in rallying units. You probably need everybody you can get, but again, the decision is yours. But you only have 6 units. Do you need the movement factors? You might argue that. But I argue that it's a 4 even for 5 shots is far superior than having 2 to 3 shots of an 8 even, of an 8 plus 1. That's my argument. It doesn't have to be right, but that's where I value that particular 8-1 leader. You don't have to. Again, this guy's not falling on a boat anyway. He's not getting on a boat. He's going to be over here. He's going to be over there. If you don't use him and you move these guys over here, you just lost 2 firepower and a unit. Give him a purpose. Give him the MMG. Does he need help with a leader? Maybe. Let's say you roll Snake Eyes or a 4, doubles. He's going to cower. He's going to be done. If you have the leader, A, you're going to vaporize him on the Snake Eyes, and you're going to punch the shit out of him on the 4. And guess what? You get to do it again. All right. So the leader gives you much more versatility and power in terms of that. Simply the 8-1 leader. Could you stick the 7-0 leader and get the same effect? Yes. But you won't get the height advantage reduction because the Russians are not coming off the hill. And we haven't even gone into the mines. There's some random mines that you could set up. So the Germans have to be either going through or avoiding mines, which we'll cover that when we do the scenario. So again, that's reading your scenario card and deciphering how you could use a unit. Right? How can I use that? Why is that unit not on a boat? Why is he not allowed on a boat? This might be the reason. All right, back to the scenario card. Let's take a look at a couple of the other scenario special rules and the Russian OB. Actually, let's take a look at the Russian OB initially. Okay. I'm going to scream something at you, and you're going to know the answer. Take a look at the Russian OB, and what do you see? First of all, you're playing a Russian scenario. What's the absolutely first thing you need to look at in a Russian scenario, other than recognizing it to be a Russian scenario, right? You have to look down here and see that we got a Russian right here, right? What else do we need to see? We need to see our leaders. Which leader do we care about, if any? What are we looking for as the Russian player? There are 2 things that we're looking for. Technically 3 things if you want to really get nitty-gritty with it. But we're looking for an 8-0. Oops. An 8-0 or an 8-1. Do we have either of those here? Yeah. Got one. This guy's a loser. Next thing we need to do is what? Check the date. Pre-October. I think it's October. I think it's pre-October. Again, I'd have to check the rule. Let me go check it. I've played the Russians a lot. I should know it. But I don't need to because I can access the rules. All right. A25.22 Commissar. We have Comrade Zucker as our Commissar of choice here. As an aside, anybody knows how to get rid of this stupid ass thing? Let me know. I hate directing it all over the place. I have to put it in the middle. It's annoying as hell. If anybody knows how to get rid of that, I've been trying to find a shortcut to get rid of it. I'd be forever in your debt. Or until tomorrow. So anyway, Commissar. Commissar is a 9-0-10-0, which is special capabilities, yada, yada, yada. Prior to when? October 1942. When is it? We got a year to go, baby. We got a year left. The Russian player may replace up to 180 and or 181 with a commissar. Okay? Huh. Let's go back to our OB after I screw that up. Close this. Cancel. We'll just drop it. And make some adjustments. So we have an 80. We don't have an 81. So we can replace this 80 with what? The 90. And say, Stu, that's fine and dandy. Commissars like to kill their people, especially conscripts. Learning scenario, right? These are conscripts. This is the guy that's going to kill them. But guess what? Germans in the boats. Germans still in the boats, just came on the land. Germans at the bottom of the hill. Let's say we break one guy. We don't have long to rally these guys. If they're broken, Germans going to run past them, and win the game. We need them rallied, and we need them rallied right here. Turn 4 rallies, turn 5 rallies, turn 6 rallies. If they die, they're not going to do us any good anyway. Again, they might be disrupted. They're definitely going to be DM'd. You're going to need a snake eyes to rally them. With your commissar, you will need a 6 to rally them, because did you see any rally terrain that those guys are going to be in? Nope. And again, if you're routing, you have to look at routing directions. And again, we will cover that in the Russian setup. Not going to be covered here. So Germans are essentially not really going to be coming into play until here, unless you put the medium machine gun on the opposite side of the bridge or opposite side of the river. If he pegs 2 out of the 4 units, that's 1/4 of the Russian troop that pretty much is going to be out of whack. The commissar's got to get to them, and he's got to rally them. So you've got turn 4 and 5 and 6 to get them up. They're probably going to be dead or rallied by then. That's all that's all there's to it. If he's broken on turn 4, he's going to be gone by turn 6 if you don't rally in 2 turns. Or actually turn 5, because you got to have the Russian rally and the German rally. He's going to be gone by turn 5. Who cares? You're not going to get a sniper, and you are going to be disrupted. Okay? That's what those mean. Nothing. All right? Foxholes here. Mines. The beauty of the mines. Now you say, Stu, mines are really defensive oriented. They're difficult to consider. We need to check out what we're getting. We need to know where to place them to funnel the enemy. Yada, yada, yada. Again, it references known AP minefields. F.7. Again, it allows the new player to seek out new life and new civilizations and go into the desert rules and read F.7. And scenario special rule number 3. I love this one because let's take a look at scenario special rule 3. Again, learning scenario. It makes it easy. Certain scenario special rules make it easy on the player. The Soviet player must place the following AP mine counters in a cup or face down. 3 6 strength, 1 8 strength, and 3 dummies. So you have 7 counters, of which you will draw 5 randomly, and without looking at them, place them on the ground level hexes, not level 1, ground level hexes on between hex rows G through J. All right? You don't even know what they are as the Russians. So you don't know if the Germans can run through them or whatever. Again, it kind of works to your advantage, because if you want to defend one certain area heavy, the Germans don't know if the other ones are going to be mines or not, and neither do you. So that's kind of like the random factor. And to be honest with you, I was kind of thinking about this. These are conscript boneheads, right? These are guys that just came out of the farmland. They probably came within the last 100 kilometers, drug on, given a rifle, and maybe 2 days of training. And here we are. I think these guys are Ukrainians in here, just by the historical aspects of the scenario. That's regardless of what we're doing. Conscripts, untrained. Who put the mines in? Probably not the conscripts. So they're showing up to this location. The mines are already there, was set a couple months before, maybe. You know, the Germans are coming. Let's mine this area. They might come across this short spot. There you go. Somebody put up some posts. Achtung meinen. You know, and these guys just got there yesterday. They're not going to know what the hell's what. The commissar says, if you go back, I shoot you. If you go forward, you get exploded by the mines. So guess what? You're staying there and fighting. That's all there is to it. And it's less likely that these guys would actually know what they are, you know, as a schlep and as a conscript unit versus an elite. You know, if these are A38s, they would damn well know where the mines are, but the player wouldn't. So I like the scenario special rule. Makes it easy to set up. You just have, okay, do I want 3 in a row? Do I want to split them all up? What do I want to do? Boom, boom, boom. And you just throw them on the map. And it's kind of exciting to reveal them. You could get all 5 or 4 regular ones and 1 dummy. In my draw, I had 4 regular ones and 1 dummy. When I play this solo, I'm just going to put them out there and do them randomly as the Germans move on to them if they move on to them. I don't even know what the hell they are, obviously, because you shouldn't. So, and the other thing is the Soviet MMC counters again. Learning scenario makes it easy for you. You are under no move counters. You can't move until certain things activate your units. So as the Russians, this actually kind of makes it a nice solo scenario because you really can't do shit as the Russians too much. And you can only stack a couple units. But you could advance. Strangely enough, under no move counter, you could still advance. So you have a little bit of movement, but not much. So your defense is pretty stagnant. You got some mines up front. You got some leaders that can run around to free those guys' unit from a no move counter, just like night scenarios. So it kind of introduces you to the no move concept, right? In sort of like an SK format. You got no moves until a leader starts your turn with you. That's very similar to an SK rule that's incorporating an ASL rule. So again, we've got boats, we've got no move counters, we got mines, which can be very difficult if you have a giant scenario. You got to get tanks across, you could convert the mines to AP mines. None of that shit's here. Basic mines, basic boats, basic units, basic movement, or none in the case of the Russians. Very limited movement, okay? Very simple game with some rules that you have to get to read up on. Say, Stu, he's a new player. Why is he reading rules? Oh my God, he's going to just quit. He's going to quit like all the other ones. Gentlemen, this is ASL. If you're not reading up rule sections, as I've regurgitated in every single other scenario that I've come across, do I know what a hero is? I'm going to look up hero. I'm going to double check to see what hero activities are. I kind of know what they are. I've played with them before. But me, I'm going to go read this. If a hero passes a morale, fails a morale check, takes a wound, does he die? If he fails it again, is he going to die? Is Escobedo going to die off for 2 failed morale checks? I need to know that now. Not when I'm playing a game, now. Fanatic. Do I cower? Don't know. I know the morale level goes up. That's about all I know. 100%. Do I cower? I don't think they take pre-FP task checks. So, but guess what? On the back of the counter, Fanatic, it will have much of that information. But I'm reading this section anyway. Okay? No rule references here. No rule references there. That's it. You got a couple rule references. And guess what? F.7. I'm reading that as well. Okay? Very small sections. This is what you as an ASL player need to do. You are constantly reading rules and deciphering them. Me, I would have my rule book open to the side when I'm doing this game. And because my opponent most likely didn't do his homework, I'm going to do his homework for him by reading him up on the boats, especially if I'm the German, so I know what the hell's going on with my guys. And when he fires on them, he fires his LMGs at full firepower. It's 2-2, and you're in the open, bop, 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 bop. And I say, yeah, you're full of shit. This is the way it happens because of this rule. And he says, what? I don't think so. An expert player told me that you're 2-2 in the open. Yeah, he is an expert player. But again, when you hear someone say an expert player told you, there are literally 4 or 5 things can happen. A, he told you correctly and you interpreted them incorrectly. B, he told you the gist of the rule, but not the details of the rule. And so a couple things are left out, like fanatic, right? The gist of the rule is they get increased morale level, and that's pretty much all I care about. The details might be left behind. B, he told you incorrectly. Or C, he told you correctly and you, maybe I repeated that one already, and you didn't understand him anyway. Or you only understood 10% of them, right? He told you the full rule. Your eyes glazed over the back of your head. And because it's long, because he's long-winded or boring like me, and therefore you didn't catch the whole rule. So it behooves you as an ASL player to do your homework. Again, I will say this every single scenario. Do your homework. You're going to be playing this for 40 years like the rest of us will already have. Read the rule, read the rule, read the rule. Read the boats. I can guarantee you no one's mastered the boats. They don't know how to play the boats. Unless they're like Carl Noguera and he's designed Dinant, and boats is like all of Dinant, right? Getting the hell across the river. He knows his boats. So call Carl. I'm West Coast, he's East Coast. I'm going to call him at midnight. He's going to wake up at 3. Say, what's up, Stu? I say, Carl, boats, buddy. I got to know what the hell I'm doing here. He says, go get screwed. I'm sleeping. I say, okay, see you, Carl. Click. And that's about it. So you're going to have some people that know their stuff. And you're not one of them. So read your rules. It will make your enjoyment and play of the scenario far better. Again, thousands of scenarios. We're not going to play them all, people. We're not playing them all. So the ones you do play, maximize your enjoyment by facilitating learning the scenario. You may forget it the next day. Learn the scenario as you play it, when you play it. 6 turns, a very short scenario, right? Again, much better than playing a 10-turn scenario with 45 squads and you screw up all the rules the entire time. Oh shit, I forgot all my entrenchments were supposed to be known. Scenario Special Rule 4, we didn't bother to read. All my fortifications are known. Oh, and my units can't move for like first 3 turns of the game. Oh shit, well there's 15 hours right there. Not fun, people. That's not fun because you just blew your chance to have a fun scenario. That's my opinion. Again, my opinion. I like to try and do things the way they're, quote, designed. I've screwed them up. I will screw them up in the future. And a matter of fact, the last scenario you guys saw, the Japanese paradrop, we screwed it up. After the fact, Jack said, Stu, I set my guys up off the board. They were incorrectly set up. I said, oh, shit, I didn't even know. I didn't even see it. I was so worried about and giddy about my Japanese paratroopers, I completely didn't even think my opponent would screw up a setup. Just verify, right? They pop up on the board. You see them. Verify setup. Say, know what his setup is as if you were to play. Therefore, you'll help him. Say, oh, by the way, you didn't set up that artillery piece in a building, did you? You didn't set that red large unit in a building, the AA gun in a building, did you? And if you did, he says, yeah, oh, shit, Stu, I did. Can I reset him? Yeah, go ahead and reset him. Boom. Now you've got your 15 hours of gameplay back in your pocket instead of being screwed. When you roll up on the building and the 150 millimeter artillery piece blasts the living shit out of your units that are stacked there, your 3 flamethrowers, and he's got like a 36 minus 15 on you, and he could throw the dice off your head and still kill your units. Literally. So don't let that be you. It doesn't take long to do your homework. When you're at lunch, right? Call in sick one day before your game starts. At least go home 4 hours early. Go read up on the rules, play through them on the map, saying this is what I'm going to be doing. Whatever. If you don't have that time, then just kind of take the rules, print them out. Electronic rule books, print out the 2 pages. I do it all the time. Print out your 2 pages, highlight the shit that applies. Highlight it. Right? Grade in, turn black, color black. You could color black all that whole section and then print it out the stuff that doesn't apply. And then it will break that rule down into literally, again, just like this Spanish Blue Division game does. It's got 2-3 pages of rules. For this scenario, you use 2 paragraphs. You use 2 paragraphs. All right, gentlemen, that's probably way too long, but I just want to kind of reiterate the fact, little things to look at, little things in my opinion, as a player that wants to get the most out of his gaming, take a look at it. Don't just look at it with the thing, just push counters around. What options do you have? You know, we're not even going into scenario strategy. I didn't even touch the scenario strategies. What options do you have? You know, 248, is that an error? People say, oh, critical hit, they screw up all the time. Yeah, that's possible. They probably have. They're probably unbalanced. We don't care about the balance. Again, learning scenarios do not have to be balanced. Do not have to be balanced. Guys, guess why? If you're learning and I'm new, if you're new, I'm new, or you're experienced and I'm new, or both experienced, doesn't matter. We're going to forget something. We're going to screw up, especially if both of you are new. You're both going to be learning shit and you're both going to be screwing stuff up. I guarantee you new players, depending on the player, on the average player, will not remember, especially if they don't play the Russians very often, because in SK there are no commissars. And when they come from SK into ASL, let's say this is one of the first 20 ASL scenarios, they probably skipped over the commissar. So they won't realize to look for a commissar. Again, an additional reason why this is a good learning scenario. Read your nationality distinctions, right? You have the Germans have certain nationality distinctions, and the Spanish that are playing for the Germans have additional abilities or modifiers, as the case may be. I didn't even mention them because it's not important here. But note that. Read your nationality distinctions before each game. You do that after playing the Russians 25 times. Guess what? You've just read that small section, and the Russians actually have one of the longer sections, 25 times. Right? Therefore, you're going to retain a little bit more or maybe see something you didn't see before. The Germans, pretty straightforward. Give them a whole shitload of firepower and just kill everything. Pretty much is what the Germans do. But everybody else, slightly different. They're going to have one-liners. One-liners. So take that for what it's worth. It may not be worth anything. Maybe priceless. Don't know. But that's the kind of the philosophy that I'm trying to share here. I think that this is a good learning scenario in terms of the players taking the material that's given to them, reading what's necessary and not what's extra. I don't need to read all the extra stuff. I only need to read this section, and that's all I'm going to read because it's the only thing that applies. Don't need to care about the rest of the crap. Again, number one reason why nobody plays ASL, the first thing everybody mentions, I've been to a lot of game conventions. Everybody mentions, oh, I play ASL, because I'll set up SK for wanting to get some players. I remember that. I played some, man, that rule book's huge, isn't it? first thing they mention is the rule book. That's the first thing they mention is the rule book. And then first thing you should say is, well, yeah, you only use about 10% of the rules at any given time. And guess what? 10% of a 200 to 300 page rule book, don't say 800 because chapter H doesn't apply. You're not using 400 pages of chapter H. Come on, let's be real. And honestly, chapter A, B, C, and D might be 120 pages. Let's say 150. Using 10 to 20%, that's 30 pages. How much is Panzer? How much is Andean Abyss? What about Onward to Rome? Whatever, right? They're reading 20 or 30 pages. Literally, they're reading the same amount of material. Is their material probably easier to read? Yeah. I guarantee it's probably easier to read, But ASL rulebook is designed not to be read while you're half asleep. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of my reading comes from. And that's why I screw up. So anyway, learning scenario, let me see have I forgotten anything. Again, learning does not mean balanced. So let me know if you think other things from this example, maybe even other examples, but try to focus on this example. Other things I may have skipped over that might make it a good learning example. You got a 10-2 leader, high morale leader, right? You got a commissar, fun to play with commissars. Always good to kill your own units, right? So fire lanes might come into play. They probably will come into play. So try to find some things that I didn't cover and post them down below, please. That might also make this a decent learning scenario in terms of making you a more adept ASL player in approaching a game. Okay? Thank you for your time. And now, gentlemen, where are you going to go? You're not going to go to bed. You're going to set up your next ASL scenario so you can go play some ASL.